Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel and on the next episode of MITRE framework. And in the previous episode, we discussed about initial access and the most common techniques that are abused by the APT group or attackers. We have discussed that, and today we are going to discuss about the tactics, that is execution, and I will be showing you or explaining you some of the important and most common techniques that are generally abused by attackers. So I will begin with by telling you the names of that most common techniques that are abused by attackers. So it begins with command and scripting interpreter, and the next one is exploitation for client execution, native API, scheduled task and job, and after that shared modules is rarely used, but yeah, sometimes like I have seen that this technique is also used. But you can say that after schedule task slash job, the most common one is user execution and Windows management instrumentation. So I've told you the name of like one exploitation is the 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. Six techniques are very important out of that tactist execution, and these are the most common techniques that are generally abused by attacker. And after these six techniques, the other thing as a technique which I have seen it's very rare, but I have seen that is shared modules and system services. But today we are going to just discuss about the six techniques that are most common. So starting with command and scripting interpreter, it just tells you about like command and scripting interpreter, which means that some script, command, or you can say entry binaries which has been deployed to the system, or somehow you have got to install it, or maybe by clicking to a compromised link or malicious link, you have got this particular executable to get downloaded to your system, and the execution has happened within your system. So this technique clearly explains that these interfaces and the languages provides the interacting with computer systems and are a common feature across many different platforms. So for every operating system, they have a shell command that is used in order to get communicated with the other services of that particular operating system. Like for Mac OS and Linux, the Unix shell is there, but for Windows there are two. The one is CMD, which says that Windows command shell, which do have some privileges, but it is limited. It does not have a lot of permissions. So if you want to get complete hold of that particular operating system and a privilege permissions, so for that there is also another shell in Windows, that is PowerShell. So the two things are there. And you can see the sub techniques are also mentioned, like whenever the execution or any executable payload has been dropped and that payload is capable of executing PowerShell, maybe some Apple script in some other operating system, cross platforms, and CMD and other shells. You can see Python is also a program that is used to do scripting, and so that the execution of some particular script can be done. So these are the sub techniques as a part. And from this original framework, we can take a look at some examples. Like I'm going to show you some of the examples that is also mentioned over here. So some of the examples, like the procedure examples are some of the APTs they have downloaded and launched some code within the SCT file. So this is a framework that also provides you some of the examples. So it gives you a brief idea, like here it is mentioned like APT37 has used Ruby scripts in order to execute the payload, which means due to some initial access, some dropper files or maybe payloads has been dropped into the victim system, so that the auto execution can be done using some other execution method, or maybe through user execution the particular script might have got executed. So these are some examples. You can, from this particular framework, you can take a look at the examples. There are lots and lots of them. So by clicking on them, you can also read about the particular attacker group and other things. And in this episode, I'm not going to discuss that. I'm just going to discuss about the most common execution techniques. So moving forward, we will take a look at the exploitation for client execution. And I'll tell you, this is the most common exploitation for, this is the most common technique, in which what happens, exploitation for client execution simply means that there is some vulnerability available in any kind of applications, be it first party, browser, or you can say any product or any third party application or any package or software, you can say. So if the vulnerability exists, so there will be some CVE, which means either it will be a patched CVE or it will be a disclosed or might have been included as a kit for further exploitation. So which means the vulnerability can be exploited by, the attacker can take advantage of that vulnerability and can do some exploitation by means of any command scripts or anything. And if that application belongs to the client end, and it can be executed on the client end and can compromise its own system, client system, so that comes under exploitation for client execution. And here also it simply says that the adversaries may exploit software vulnerabilities in client applications to execute the code. And vulnerabilities can exist in software due to unsecure coding or many other practices that they have mentioned. But the main thing is the vulnerability is there and the exploitation on the client end can be done so that the execution of code and the further things can be taken place. After which it it says that there exist in several types, and let me see if there is any important. Yeah, here also it mentions that the advantage of certain vulnerabilities through targeted exploitation for the purpose of arbitrary code execution, means any random code execution can be utilized in order to exploit it. The main motive of any attacker to take advantage of the vulnerability is to exploit somehow that particular vulnerability so that the task or the motive of that attacker for that particular organization or the work system can be achieved. And yeah, of course, as we know, as we have discussed earlier, that after gaining the access to that particular system, these things happen. So I'm just going to read out certain things which are important. Like here it is mentioned, oftentimes the most valuable exploit to an offensive toolkit are those that can be used to obtain code execution on a remote system. Like you might have seen you might have read about like remote code execution. So remote code execution, if you are going to see anything in any article, the remote code execution is mentioned. So behind that, the technique which has been abused by the attacker is definitely exploitation for client execution. There could be additional techniques along with that, like command and scripting interpreter, where the article might be talking about some script execution, or maybe the user has clicked on some malicious code through which the script got executed. So user execution and other things could be a part of that. But yeah, definitely it comes under like remote execution is one such example of exploitation for client execution. So it comes in various phases, like browser based exploitation. If there is there is any vulnerability in the browsers, like different browsers, we have Microsoft Edge and we have Chrome, Firefox, Safari, Opera and other things for the different platforms. So if there is any recent vulnerability because of the updated release of features or something, so if that can be exploited, so in that case it comes under this technique. And office applications like Microsoft Office suites that are usually used with along with that are usually targeted through phishing. Like phishing does contain some of the PDF files, and sometimes Word file is also embedded in that, and Excel file is also embedded in that. So through that thing, attackers take use of it, and if the attachment says clicked and it is downloaded, so even after clicking, the execution of script can be done. So there combines multiple techniques like user execution, command and scripting interpreter, and if there is any vulnerability for the particular thing within the system related to any application for which the phishing attack has been conducted, so that can be also leveraged and exploitation for client execution can happen. Here third party applications very common, like it could be any third party like Adobe Reader, Flash or anything, any such related applications are there, and if there is any vulnerability in that, so that can be also leveraged. And here if we see, some example. We will look at what example we have in MITRE framework. Yeah, so it does talk about software vulnerabilities execution. You can see that Microsoft Word CVE. I did mention you about CVEs. So it tells you about the critical vulnerability that are exposed, and so they are mentioned in which year they have been identified, and that there is a particular organization that provides the exact name for a name, I mean in numeric format, to that particular vulnerability of related to any software. So there are a lot of examples. You can see a lot of CVs mentioned which APT campaigns or APT groups have taken leverage. Microsoft Office Suite's vulnerability is also there that has been used to do the execution. See, there is also vulnerability related to browser activities. So lots of examples are there. You can take a look at here. Okay. So moving forward, we will look at the native API. Here I'm going to tell you about how exactly the native API looks. Here it means that the native API means some of the services, libraries, I can say bundles, which are binded with the operating system, that is originally used by operating system to manage the user and kernel mode interfaces somehow, so that the activity which has been requested needs to be rendered in a proper way to the user. So the request and response, it's kind of activity which comes as a request and response needs to be served well. So here the adversaries say that the adversaries may interact with the native operating system application programming interface to execute behaviors. Okay. So native API provide a control meaning of calling low level operating system within the kernel. So it does have to work with user mode interface and kernel mode interfaces. That I'm going to show you one image related to this, and also tells that what involves actually in this process, the hardware, devices, memory, processes, any APIs related to all these things can leveraged by OS during a system reboot or anything. The structure which exactly looks like a native API functions includes like Windows have multiple native API functions, like entity create process will be there, which are generally invoked via system calls and system sys calls. So I'm not also going to show you that what exactly it. So it talks about that. Yeah, I did earlier mention about that user mode application and interfaces and libraries. So it is talking about the same thing. So in short, it's a kind of, you can say, bundle library of function that helps the user mode interact with kernel mode, so that the request which has been put forward by the user mode to get executed by operating system. So operating system, syscalls, libraries, package, and Windows API functions is a part of, like you say, it is between the user mode and the kernel mode. So the user provides a request to do a task, and the kernel mode somehow helps to execute it, to provide a response, and whatever it is between in that, like library, API function, other things, helps to keep that process intact, so that the response and the request can be done in a way that both the things are satisfied at the kernel and user level. One such example is, you can see this is the example. Okay, this is the way we are the users, and there are a lot of things between the kernel. Here it is the, at the hardware level you will see that kernel mode. So above that there is operating system, system calls, library, routines, and application programs and other things. So whatever we are requesting, the particular request has to go through a lot of things, and which is in somehow is requested by kernel to provide it, so that whatever is coming from here to here also is rendered from here, from the bottom to top. Let me see if we have any other good images. System call, like this is one such example where the user process is there, like user process execution, some activity has been requested. So some activity has been requested, like one such example is assembly code. In that you can see a lot of, whenever we write any assembly code, So we have to also provide syscalls in that. And for syscalls, which means like if we have read write functionality that we want to include in our program, for every and each functionality we have a syscall code. So we have to also provide syscall code. Simply means that whenever that particular program is going to get executed, it will ask the kernel process to do all the processing, and the same syscall is going to provide you the response as well. So it provides as an intermediate between the user and the kernel mode. It does help a lot of things. Okay, and we will see some examples. Okay, you can see there are some examples. We have written anti-create processes. One such API function is there. Create process is one such. JNU process, I mean graphical interfaces API is also there. Then we can see other things. Process creation, API calls. Like here you can see virtual alloc is Windows API calls, write process memory, create remote thread, and other things for process execution. So these are some kind of functions, you can say a very short functions which comes in library package or anything, or maybe standalone, that helps the operating system execute the task which has been requested by user mode to get executed by kernel, and the process can be provided as a response via operating system. So it also mentions that the adversaries may abuse these OS API functions as a means to execute behavior. Similar to command and scripting interpreter, the native API and its hierarchy of interfaces provide mechanism to interact with and utilize various components of the victimized system while invoking API functions and attempt to, so it also provides and leverage, you can say that hackers take advantage of this tactics in order to go through defense evasion as well, because here it mentions that the attempt is used to bypass defensive tools. Defensive tools could be anything like system defenses or maybe network defenses or any other thing. So one such example is disable or modify the tools, which comes under defense evasion. So it is talking about that. After which the other techniques which is most common is schedule task, you can say, or job, which simply means that a task scheduler functionality that we have in Windows or other operating system is to facilitate the initial or recurring execution of malicious code. Not only malicious code, any other functionality, like whenever you boot your operating system, there are a lot of certain system that needs to be executed every time you reboot your system. So there could be like antivirus scanning, the basic process that needs to be initiated while you reboot, that has to also auto start with the reboot of every time you do the reboot. So those are the things which are placed in this particular task manager, okay, in this particular schedule task. So that you don't need to provide all the instructions every time you reboot your system, so that the operating system can do many things, recurring things on its own once it is registered over there. So this is the main functionality. And what does it provide? Operating system to schedule programs or scripts to be executed at a specific date and time. It is also specifying the date and time whenever the recurring activities needs to be executed. A task can also be scheduled on a remote system provided the proper authentication. For this the admin certain permissions and privileges needs to be there, because everybody who's going to do this modification with the date and time should not be allowed. It could be risky. The practice should be that only certain people or certain account users should have that activity to, after the proper authentication is done of that particular account, should have the activity to do certain changes with the date and time of that recurring execution of that particular process. So okay, let me show you some example. Okay, this tactics also mention that it provides you as a leverage. It provides the attacker leverage to take advantage of other tactics as well, including persistence and privilege escalation. And you can see the examples are Okay, no problem. Just two examples I mentioned. Like this particular bot has a second stage DLL has set a timer using time set event to schedule its next execution, which means within the schedule task management, this particular this particular bot put actually the particular stage related to date and time when this particular bot needs to get executed. So a particular event must have been created over there as a second stage to get execution within the system or anywhere. This particular has been triggered in a way that at a particular time and date it will get executed. So that was the changes that was made on the system. Okay, schedules the execution one of its module by creating a new scheduler task. Okay, no problem. I'll show you one such example how it exactly looks. So we have a lot of example, but no problem. I'm going to show you one of the good one. Okay, you can see we have a task scheduler and you can see the libraries. Either we can create a task or import it, or the new folder could be there, or you can see some of the status of already created already pre-created for the operating system to take advantage of for the daily basis, whatever process that needs to be run after the reboot. Some of them are also running. So this is the structure where the malicious code, or you can say the malware, can enter itself and to get executed the other dropper files and other things. For that, the specific date and time can be mentioned, which means the activity of further exploitation, or you can say further malicious activity, can take place using this task scheduler. Okay, after that we have user execution and Windows Windows management instrumentation. Okay, user execution simply means that it comes in the form of phishing. Like whenever we get any email phishing attack, there is definitely some hustle with that particular content. Like it is showing you some urgent some urgent messages to take action regarding something, and there will be some link, you can say some malicious link or some malicious attachment provided with that phishing attack. It could be spear phishing or spam, or maybe for phishing for a mask. So in that thing, if the victim, or you can say if the user is directly going to get interacted with that particular malicious URL hyperlink or the malicious attachment, then that time, that specific moment is called that the user has done user execution on that particular malicious URL or malicious attachment. So in that context, the technique which is involved is called user execution. I'm going to show you some example for user execution. Internal spear phishing is one such. Sometimes the company also tests its employee that how far they are taking care of their own cyber security ethics. In that they test. So I'm just going to have a look at, this is one such example, like in which this kind of particular files could be there attached with that particular phishing attack, and if the user is directly going to get interact itself by doing some click or by downloading it, so which means that the user has directly interacted with these particular attachments or hyperlinks. So this technique involves as a user execution in this case. After that, we have a last one, that is Windows management instrumentation. Okay, so Windows management instrumentation is the abusement which is related to WMI. We usually called it WMI, to execute malicious commands and payloads. WMI is an administration feature that provides a unique environment to access Windows system components. Means whatever components that is required by the operating system in the Windows, so all those components is administered by, you can say administered by this WMI. so that a particular environment to should be can be provided to operating system so that the task can be executed well. And this WMI services enable both the local and remote services through the latter is facilitated by remote services, and the other components are mentioned over here that can be utilized. Okay, I'll show you the example which will be really helpful. Grateful for the. Okay, let me see if I can get some example. Okay, so WMIC.executable is a part of that system component that helps the attacker to do some malicious activity. Like here, this particular executable, which is related to Windows system component, is deleting shadow files. Shadow copies, which means it is maintained when the ransomware attack happens. Shadow copies actually help to bring back the backup of the original files if the files which are present on the victim system has got encrypted. So in that case, what if we are not willing to pay the ransom? In that case, what happens? The shadow files helps to bring back the those backups so that we don't need to pay the ransom. If we don't maintain it or we don't maintain the backup, obviously when the files are encrypted and you want to get those files decrypted, for that you have to pay ransom to the attacker so that they can give you the decryptor key. Okay, so the executable it is talking about, and okay, WMI, since it is a complete system component, a package of complete system components, so it can be used for multiple things. So here also, and in most of the articles they are just going to simply mention about the WMI simply because it contains a lot of things and belongs to Windows operating system solely. So I'll show you some other things like what we can get. Yeah. Okay, what Wikipedia says is it consists of a set of extensions to the Windows driver model that provides an operating system interface through which instrumented components provide information and notification. Yeah, as I mentioned that this environment and system is solely important for operating system interfaces to take the actions and understand whatever task needs to be done with respect to the information, notification and other things that are going on within the system, within the work environment of our Windows operating system. So it is related to that. Let me see if we can get some more examples. As we see, more examples are not there, just it is mentioned as WMI. Okay, let me see how actually WMI look. Okay, this is one such good image. Okay, it includes WMI service management, objects, WMI providers, classes, methods, repository. You can see a lot of things is involved in this and which is present in the Windows operating system. So it also includes services where we see, let it load. What happened? It should load actually. Okay, no problem. Okay, showing you about the administrative tools as well, where we have a lot of services. You can see a lot of services related to operating system, where it includes PowerShell modules, memory diagnostic, firewall, advanced security related thing, task scheduler, system configuration services, and other things like performance management, monitoring, print, local security systems, event viewer, and data sources. So you can see, in short, we can say that whatever as a service to maintain that particular operating system of Windows, whatever is required as an inbuilt feature that needs to be handled not by the user but by some privileges of that particular system, so that is involved. This can be changed, many changes can be done, but only if we have the permission to do it. Like for permission, we should have the system admin permissions. If we have an individual system or you can say laptop, then we can make the changes. If we have any workstation belonging to any organization, obviously only the system admin people have the authority, or you can say permissions, to do the changes. We as a user, as a local user, I can say simple user, we don't have any authority to do the changes in this particular, you can say, administrative tools. Okay, so today we discuss some important techniques of, you can say, execution, that is the tactics of MITRE framework. And that has been discussed because the most common ones is discussed, and as it is abused by the attackers. So, and in the next episode, we'll be discussing about persistence, like what are the things and the most common techniques that are abused by attackers to leverage the system and maintain persistence in that particular system. As of now, we have discussed a lot of things. Please like the video and subscribe, and next time we'll meet and discuss upon persistence. What is it and what are the things that is involved as a most common techniques abused by attacker. Thank you. Bye.